What's up, legends, and welcome to the first of hopefully many Meta Mondays, a new sort of mini series of mine where I'm just going to talk about the meta and usually a particular aspect of it. Remember, not every Monday is Meta Monday, but only Mondays can be meta. Or something like that. I need a stupid tagline. And that seemed to work. Today's episode is brought to you by Kunter the Shanghai Geek, who left this interesting comment on my Bigfoot video a couple days ago, and that really got my mind jogging. He said, "I'm curious what you think Bigfoot's place is following BOL2. It's a small sample size for now, but in ladder, new heroes like Sun Wukong and Yanenga are challenging him hard and his win rates are quite low." Currently, right now, the Season 1 ladder on unmatchedleague.net. Go check out that website if you haven't already. It's really cool, and you can join the ladder. It's not too late. You can see that right now, Bigfoot has a 45% win rate versus Achilles, 10% versus Sun Wukong, and 42% versus Yanenga. Bloody Mary, the fourth BOLV2 hero, is not included in this season of the ladder, so there is no statistic for that. And you can see he has about 40 plays between all of those heroes. Now, 45% win rate and even low 40s isn't really a horrible win rate. It's just that for Bigfoot, he's used to having at least high 50s usually against most of the cast. So seeing something that's slightly more average is a little alarming for him. And of course, the 10% win rate, albeit it is only across 10 plays versus Sun Wukong, is bad. His overall win rate right now on the ladder is 47%, and that's 6th out of 10, but the person in 4th has a 49% win rate, so it's about average over 93 plays, which is actually the 3rd worst in the ladder right now out of the 10 legal heroes, which is kind of weird since Bigfoot is known as one of the, or I should say, was known as one of the members as the Big Three, depending on your outlook. And so seeing him get that little plays might be indicative of the specific meta, but it also might be a warning sign of things to come for him. So Kunter goes on and says, "I'm curious, not having played him myself, still new to Unmatched, if it is power creep possibly." So I thought today I would talk about Bigfoot compared to the new Battle of Legends Volume 2 heroes, and if he's fallen off, if maybe people aren't playing him right, and if the new sets have power creep. So let's get into it by first just reviewing some of Bigfoot's strengths. I talked about the big three in my Summer of Legends Round 2 video, where I didn't actually have any gameplay to show, but I just talked about the big three. I guess that was kind of like my first Meta Monday, but 6 months ago, and it wasn't called Meta Monday. So Bigfoot has above average health. He's move 3. He's only melee, not range, so that's not good for him. He has probably the most consistent card draw in the game. He has high value attacks and blocks. He has 5 cancels, lots of any cards, scheme damage, and I guess some weaknesses compared to the other members of the big three is that he has no discard effects, random or choice, and he doesn't really have any combos, but just his fundamentals are really good. And I think in his strategy guide, I called him the Tim Duncan of Unmatched. So with just that little refresher in mind, let's talk about why Bigfoot potentially isn't really that good into the Battle of Legends Volume 2 heroes. And the first thing that comes to mind when I'm thinking about these matchups is Bigfoot's offensive potential, because he is very linear, I think, as Josh Tan would say. He has a bunch of high value attacks, and that's really it. He has larger than life, obviously the printed 6 with no text, but he also has things like savagery and disengage, which are very solid 4 value attacks with cool effects, and momentous shift. So there really isn't that much going on with him on offense. I guess, yes, you also have hoax and skirmish, but you're usually going to use those on defense instead. He just hits you, and he hits you pretty hard, and if you can't block well, you're not going to do that great in that particular game. But Achilles, his game plan is a little weird. At least when Pat is alive, he can make his sidekick, Patroclus, the target of the attack with under Achilles' helm. So now Bigfoot swinging on Achilles with a 6 value attack, well, you just dealt 4 damage to Pat instead of the enemy hero. And while Pat is dead, Achilles has just solid block options. You have Skirmish, Hermes, and Wily Fighting, and I guess Achilles Heal, although that's probably not the best thing to play into something that will win the combat like the larger than life and give Bigfoot another action. But they all have useful effects like Wily and Hermes and Skirmish, I guess, although Skirmish isn't really going to win unless it's against Savagery or Disengage. So while Achilles probably isn't the best example of someone that just counters Bigfoot's very direct and linear offense, he isn't as affected by it as, say, someone like Robin Hood would be, who just doesn't have a lot of high value blocks. Mary has decent value blocking, but maybe it's a little bit mediocre. She has Mirror Image, a 0 value block card that just copies the printed value of the attack played against that block, which against Disengage and any of the other 4s like Savagery and against Larger Than Life will just block all of the damage, and it's really, really good. I guess the only card that Mirror Image is bad against in Bigfoot's deck is the Momentous Shift, which will deal 2 damage over it, which I guess really isn't that bad when it comes to Mary. She also has some other 4s like Infinity Mirror and Broken Glass, which aren't the best against Larger Than Life, but it's better than some other characters can be. Sun Wukong, of course, has the ultimate block package of Tortoise Form, Bewilderment, and Golden Chainmail. Golden Chainmail being the biggest asset to him, because if Bigfoot plays a 6 into Golden Chainmail, Bigfoot will end up taking 2 damage, which is just horrible for him. And Yanenga, of course, can divert any damage she takes to her archers. So she's usually going to block with a 3. So if she takes 3 damage from the Larger Than Life, she can deal 1 damage to each of her archers and have her take 1 damage herself. And that's like 1 damage to the hero for a 6 value attack. And then she can play something like 1 with the land and heal it all back. And suddenly you played a 6, she played a 3, but you didn't deal any damage to her. It's pretty good. So a lot of these characters, just their block cards or their general mechanics or strategies don't really care about you playing a bunch of high value attacks on them, because they either just block it all, like Bewilderment or Mirror Image, or they have their sidekicks take the damage, like Under Achilles' Helm and Yanenga's ability. So when we were talking about Bigfoot's strengths in that big 3 chart I was talking about before this, I mentioned that him being melee and his sidekick, the Jackalope, being melee, was a weakness. And this is because if your opponent chooses to body block and you, whatever reason on the map, you can't get around the meat shield they're putting in front of their prime asset, you'll have to just beat down the meat shield before you can actually get to the good stuff that you're trying to hit. And whether it's the hero body blocking for a sidekick or the sidekick put in front of the hero, you're going to have a little bit of problems. For example, Sun Wukong can make a bunch of clones and use them as shields so that Bigfoot has to beat down all the clones to actually land hits on Sun Wukong. And Yanenga can put her archers behind her so that you have to attack her hero, and that way she can divert the damage to her archers and then either heal it, or then she can put the 1 health archer in front of her hero and make you beat down that 1 health sidekick when really you'd like to just hit Yanenga in that instance. So the characters with sidekicks can kind of be a pain in the butt for you, especially as a double melee team. Although I will mention that Bigfoot's movement effects, like Hoax and Crash Through the Trees, and I guess even Jackalope Horns, can help with this. But if you don't have those options in your hand, having to brute force your way through sidekicks won't always work here, especially when the characters have solid block cards that we talked about in order to deal with your very linear offensive game plan. And the main mechanic introduced in Battle of Legends Volume 2 were double attacks. And double attacks are very punishing because, just as a basic concept, they require your opponent to play 2 cards for your 1, which is just the definition of card advantage. Bigfoot has 6 4-value block cards that can really slow down most other heroes, but double attacks actually find a way to outvalue them. And because all 4 of the new heroes in Battle of Legends Volume 2 have these double attacks, it's changing the dynamic for many, many people, because your 3 hoaxes and your 3 skirmishes are just very solid. They're going to block a lot of damage normally on most other attacks, but all of the double attacks are relatively low value attacks that basically make the defender have to spend multiple cards to deal with them. So having these high value blocks that block a lot of damage aren't really that useful anymore, because you'll have to spend 2 of them in order to fully block the double attack. Let's take Yanenga's Rain of Arrows. It's just a 3-value attack, and after combat, it's another 3-value attack. It's very vanilla, it's very basic, probably the most ordinary double attack. Playing 2 hoaxes, or a hoax and a skirmish, whatever combination, just on that 1 card to block that 6 damage really hurts you. You're losing a lot of value when you're playing both of those cards, and you might have to just take the 3 undefended if you want to not lose card advantage. You can even block with a shift or a regroup to maybe not use such a premium block card, but then you're either taking 2 damage over the regroup, or you're wasting a potential offensive option in shift on defense. And it's even worse for other heroes like Sun Wukong with his Ryu Jingu Bongs. If you block those, you're getting attacked with 4, so that kind of demands another 4 from you. And Bloody Reprise from Bloody Mary. I guess it's Bloody Requiem and then Reprise, but you play a 4 against Bloody Requiem, and then your 4 gets thrown at you with the double attack in Bloody Reprise, and that just stinks, because like Jingu Bong, it demands another 4 on defense. Achilles probably isn't that bad to double block with a 4, because the first one is a 3 that he won't win the combat, so he won't draw a card, and then you're getting attacked with a 5, so it actually makes sense to block with a 4 there if you can. But just in general, these double attacks really hurt Bigfoot and his blocking potential. And by now, some of you are probably thinking, baked goods, you soggy old cow, when are you going to talk about Feint, or the super feint in Bigfoot's deck? And yes, that is something I haven't mentioned up until this point. I am kind of cherry picking just a little bit, but the double attacks are countered by feint, because you just play a feint on the first attack and the second attack doesn't go through, because the second attack is effects based, so it gets canceled and doesn't happen. And this brings me into some of Bigfoot's redeeming qualities, his strengths that potentially help him in some of these matchups. The first being his amazing cancels. He has 5 consistent cancels, potentially the most in the game. Now, Sherlock has 5 cancels, but 2 of those are elementary, which requires him to guess correctly, so that might not often be the case. And like Achilles can also have 5 cancels if he cycles 2 feints with Battle Hardened, which won't happen in every single game. Bigfoot has 3 feints and 2 It's Just Your Imaginations, which is just an amazing card when your deck already has feints in it, because you just have so many cancels and you can shut down a lot of effects-based decks like Bruce Lee and Sinbad. So cancels are really good to play into double attacks, because you cancel the second attack at the cost of a little bit of XP. Take the Bloody Mary, the Angry Achilles, or the Yanenga double attack. Those are all going to take 3 damage, essentially. So if you play a feint into one of them, you just take 1 damage, but you cancel the second attack. So you're actually saving a lot more HP than it looks like. You're also saving another card you would play to block with. So Bigfoot having all these cancels does help against the double attacks, because when Angry Achilles attacks you with Test for Weakness, you play a feint and you save yourself from facing the 5-value Relentless Assault. Although he is less affected by cancels, because if you cancel a 6-value Skirmish or a 6-value Handshake card, that's usually a win for Achilles, because that's 3 to 4 damage onto your 16 health hero, which he can't take a lot of those hits. And Bloody Mary just gets absolutely wrecked by cancel, so having 5 of those is probably a nightmare in that matchup. Sun Wukong has a lot of junk attack cards like Jingu Bong and Taunting Laughter and the 2-value Jeet, what's that called? Infinite Strikes. And I guess it's nice to cancel those because they usually require 1 or 2 cards from you, and it's just like a stupid low value attack. So it's just good to cancel them and not lose the card advantage value race. And because you have 5 cancels, you can even cancel a 72. You can play your feints on offense just a little bit more than normal, and an offensive feint into a clone is probably a good idea because Wukong might try to just throw out a 72 on defense there so that even though the clone is going to die, it'll still get the card back. And that's a nice mind game you can potentially play because when you have it's just your imagination solely on defense, you can afford to throw out a feint on offense. And Yananga in general just has a lot of low value attacks. A lot of her cards are printed 3s, and I think the highest one, the highest printed value she has is a 4 on skirmish, and that's like the only one. And so if you cancel her attacks, a lot of times you might not take any damage and she doesn't get to do anything, which is very good. So Bigfoot having these cancels definitely helps him in most of the matchups in Volume 2, especially against the double attacks, but it's just a matter of lining up the cancels on defense against the double attacks, and if you play hoaxes and skirmishes into them, you're going to have problems. And the other Bigfoot strength I want to hit on is his consistency, because his ability gives him an amazing amount of potential draw, and especially when you just need to dig through your deck and find options or even your game-ending win condition, it's great to just be able to draw on command. And it's usually good in the Battle of Legends Volume 2 matchups. Angry Achilles will usually match or exceed your draw power because he will draw every time he wins a combat on offense or defense, so he will probably draw more cards than you. So you probably don't want to draw cards in that matchup, or at least you don't want to draw more cards than him so that you have fatigue as a possible win condition. Bloody Mary's play style of playing at a low hand count and playing very aggressively can be really punished if you just keep your hand always full, because then you always have options and you can punish her for the risks she has to take in order to try to get her ability off. Sun Wukong and Yananga have almost no card draw. They have 2 schemes each that draw 1 card, so the scheme replaced itself in its hand, so it didn't draw any more cards than it would have if they just maneuvered. So usually Bigfoot needs to be very aggressive in those matchups and draw a bunch of cards and try to land undefended hits on the characters that cannot draw as well, especially in the Yananga matchup, I think. That also stops her from getting any sort of counter offensive pressure on you. If you're constantly attacking her and having a fullish hand, it gives her less opportunities to play a big combo turn with Master of the Hunt and such if she has to spend a card each turn blocking. So to wrap this inaugural Meta Monday up, should the Bigfoot mains be panicking? Well, yes, but actually no. The Sun Wukong matchup in particular is horrible, but low 40% win rates into Achilles and Yananga is nothing to worry about at all. It's not incredibly one-sided, and I say this from experience, both are very winnable for the Bigfoot player. Bigfoot has a fairly straightforward game plan. Hit big, block big, cancel a lot, and draw a lot. That last one, if necessary. The Volume 2 heroes have very unique game plans that really push Mr. Foot to his limit, and he has to make tough decisions and great plays if he wants to come out on top and probably get a little lucky too. The big 3 are threatened now more than ever before, but that is by design. Restoration has put more thought into some of the new releases where heroes are designed to do well into top tier heroes while also having bad matchups into lower tier fighters. This intent is even present in this new Battle of Legends Volume 2 set. Yananga does pretty well into all of the big 3, but has questionable matchups with Bruce, Robin, Sinbad, Mary, and Little Red, just to name a few. Sun also has trouble with Robin, Bruce, and Red, while Achilles can be beaten by the frickin' Invisible Man. Those examples are obviously not exhaustive, just listing a few, but even though the big three are slowly being bested, the important thing is they are not being replaced. They have had too few weaknesses for too long, so this change isn't power creep. It's the development of a healthier meta. And just because this fighter in particular doesn't do so well into some of the new mechanics from Volume 2, doesn't necessarily mean the mechanics are getting stronger. It's just that Bigfoot's mechanics don't really do that well into theirs. And hey, if you think the big three are threatened now, just you wait until the Marvel sets come out. Oh boy. So that's all I have for you guys today. Hopefully you enjoyed this little meta chat. I plan on making future videos on the seasonal ladder metas. But if you have any specific hero-related questions or any other topics you'd like me to cover, please leave a comment down below and let the world hear your beautiful, beautiful mind at work. So thank you so much for watching, and as always, like, subscribe, and yeet!